Speaking of compromises, it's important to understand that the American government, and most of the world's governments really, are built on compromise. In America, the system is split into three parts. We have the judicial branch, which is run by the Supreme Court and all of the lower courts through down to the state courts. Then we have the executive branch, that's the office of the president and their responsibilities. And then we have the legislative branch. That is the Congress. It writes the laws, it legislates, as the name would imply, and is split into two distinct groups, the House of Representatives and the Senate, where the Senate consists of 2 members elected from each state. So, with 50 states in the current union, that is 100 separate senators. And this was put into place as a compromise with the smaller states in 1787 when the country came together after the Revolutionary War, and holds up to make sure that in some form of national government, the people of Wyoming, which is the least populous state, have the same say as the people from California, the most populous state, with a population that is more than 60 times larger. Where, on the other hand, to make sure that California actually does have the say that, in a sense, they deserve, because they do have a lot of people and quite a lot of money, we have the House of Representatives, where in the House, the number of representatives from each state is determined in some proportion with the population of the state. So California has the most, Wyoming has the least, and all of the other states are in between them, as according to Article 1, Section 2 of the United States Constitution, which says, representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers. The actual enumeration shall be made every 10 years. So, in this way, we guarantee that places like California and Florida and the other very populated states do have some amount of say in accordance with the fact that they are the biggest, and usually, not always, but the largest states in terms of how much money they make, how much money they bring in, how much money they spend. But that does pose a problem. In particular, that poses a problem with that last part there where they talk about the enumeration being made every 10 years. How does that enumeration get made? What does it look like, and what does it end up as? Well, for one thing, that goes through the results of the census, which we did just complete recently as of this video being posted. But the other place that this comes in, the other place that this gets determined, is in terms of apportionment. Apportionment problems are ones where you are talking about dividing up a group into not necessarily equal, but let's say representative parts. Where to get there, we have to determine how many parts have to go into each piece and how many pieces go into each part through things called the Standard Divisor and the Standard Quota, where the Standard Divisor is found very simply by dividing the total population into the number of items that are going to get allocated, the number of things that we're getting. So this gives a number of people that we're meant to have per seat. If we have some number of seats, this tells us how much we're supposed to get from each. Then the Standard Quota for a particular group, so this might be something like a state in the sense of filling the House of Representatives, is found by dividing that group, that state's population, by the Standard Divisor. That is, the Standard Quota is the actual amount of seats that a given area has based on the amount it's supposed to be split up into. That is, the amount of seats total we're expecting to have turns into how many of them we actually get in each place. And there are a lot of words here. Say standard a lot, say quotas and divisors, and there's these deceptively simple little formulas where you're not quite sure how the pieces come together. So let's take a quick example here, a quick hypothetical example that, well, might make some people from the place I went to grad school happy, but not most other people. We'll see what I mean. For this, we're going to suppose the state of Idaho secedes and divides into 4 regions split into populations like so. So you have the states A, B, C, and D. Maybe those are Ada, Blaine, Coeur d'Alene, and I don't know, it's the county that begins with the letter D in Idaho off the top of my head. But maybe those are the ones they're splitting up to, where we're going to find the standard quotas for them, and each of these is in the thousands. So there's a total of 1.8 million people, in Idaho. Where if we want to get 30 seats in the Republic of Idaho's Congress, we need to get those quotas. So, to get the quotas, what we need is the Standard Divisor. So, we're going to get our Standard Divisor, which, as per the formula, is the total population over the number of seats. Here we're talking about in terms of thousands, so 1,890 or 1.89 million, if you want to be a little bit more, maybe exact isn't quite the word, but you get the idea, divided by the number of seats that we're having allocated. That is the 30 available for the entirety of the state. They're expecting a representative branch with 30 people in it, so we divide the total into 30, and that tells us our Standard Divisor here is 63. So the Standard Divisor gives us the number of people that we want per seat. So we're expecting to have 63,000 Idahoans per seat in Idaho's Congress. I think in actuality the State Congress of Idaho has 70 seats, which feels unnecessary. I've been there. There aren't that many people. But that's how they have it set up. Where from here, now that we have our Standard Divisor, if we want to get those quotas, all we really need to do is just split off the groups into those divisors. So to get the quota for the first state, to get the quota for that first group, we would end up taking the population of that group, 275, and dividing it by 63, the quota that we have for a value of about 4.37. Then for state B, we're going to do that same thing. Their population was 383,000, so 383 divided by 63. Technically, it's 383 divided by 63,000, but you know, brief here to save some zeros, save some time, and we'll get a value there of approximately 6.08. Then we do the same thing for state C, where we are going to be dividing the population there of 465,000 by 63,000 to get 7.38 seats for state C. And then finally for state D, we divide 767,000 by 63 to get 12.17 seats available, which we can then turn into our completed table like so. And there we go. That's how we have our apportionment. But some of you should be looking at that and thinking to yourselves, hey, wait a minute. What the hell is 4.37 representatives? How are we going to get that? And that's kind of the entire problem here. That when it comes to divisors and quotas, if we just work in terms of the standard every single time, it might end up being nice. But more often than not, because it's pretty rare to get numbers that evenly divide each other unless you're careful in how you set them up, well, you'll end up with a situation like this, where you don't have that these things divide out evenly, and as a result, you got to wonder what you're going to do with those decimal values. And that's really the main problem here we have with these apportionment methods, is trying to find ways to handle those decimals, and we'll start there with one method put forth by Alexander Hamilton around the founding of the United States.